Hurricane season for 2020. We'll have a look at their potential and whatnot for 2020. I will start with how the 2019 season went, some of the key stats and key players, because I didn't get a chance to do that at the end of last year. I'll look at the squad, who's coming in and who's going out for 2020 compared to 2019. Some of the expectations, how's the schedule looking, and all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting one for the Hurricanes. They finished pretty good last year. They finished second on points, but obviously with the conference system the way it is, they finished as the fourth qualifier. So they weren't able to host the home semi, which was probably kind of what led them to their way out. But still, I went to their quarterfinal game because the Blues never make the quarterfinals, and I wanted to go to one. And they weren't convincing in that game, but they weren't convincingly beaten in the semi. So it was a decent season, to be fair. Now, they have a lot of areas which are good when you analyze like some of those key attacking stats. Like average points per game, they're the third best team. That kind of makes sense. Run meters, they're third best. Line breaks, fourth best. Tackle bust, second best. Interestingly, pick and drives, they are the third highest team as well. And their kicking meters were fairly up there as well. They're the third team for kicking meters per game. So they're third for running and third for kicking. You would think maybe if you're doing one, you're maybe not necessarily doing the other. Like when you looked at the Hawaii's season, they were number 1 for kicking, and they were like number 11 for running. So yeah, the Hurricanes just don't like having the ball down their own end of the field. They either going to run it at you or they're going to kick it at you. So look out either way, I guess. And interestingly, their error rate was 14th out of 15 teams, so very good, very controlled. And winning their opponent's line-out, they were the 5th best team, which is like it was kind of impressive because like they don't have a Whitelock or a Retallick or a Scott Barrett kind of in their second row. So those guys like Blackwell and Losi and whatnot really, stood up really well, which was impressive to see. It wasn't all fantastic though. I mean, some of the stuff is kind of tactical, like 12th for offloads. I would have thought maybe they're a bit higher, but like I said, their error rate is low, so they don't tend to throw those 50-50 passes if they don't have to. Interestingly though, like I was just giving a bit of credit to their locks for their work on the opposition line-out. On their own line-out, they were the worst team in Super Rugby. I think equal with the Sunwolves, the percentage was 84%, but they were ranked as 15th, I think, because they played more games, so they had more chances to get it higher. I guess potentially more chances to get it lower as well. But yes, ranked the 15th best team out of 15. So that's one area they could work on between the hookers and the locks, and the lifters as well. Penalties conceded, they were 4th. So they were up there with conceding a lot of penalties. And penalties won, they were 9th, so kind of mid-table. So again, in terms of the ledger of are you conceding more or getting pinged more, like the Crusaders who finished the champions, like the Hawaii's who finished as beaten finalists, they all follow the same formula, which is we give away more penalties and don't win as many. It doesn't seem like a great winning formula, but I guess there's something to it. Run meters conceded, the Hurricanes were relatively high with 5th, so they weren't that bad on points conceded. It was 9th, so it's kind of mid-table. But if you look at the Crusaders, they were 15th for points conceded. You look at the Hawaii's, again, the two teams that finished in the final, they were 14th for points conceded. So the run meters conceded and the points conceded was perhaps one of the, Achilles heels of that Hurricane side, because like all their attacking stats, like I mentioned, are phenomenal. And line breaks conceded, they were 3rd. So yeah, their defense at times was giving up some ground. In terms of individuals, there are a couple of key men with ball in hand. That's your man Nani Laumape, couldn't make the World Cup, but second best try scorer in Super Rugby, averaged almost a try a game. Great for run meters, great for tackle busts. Lamb as well out on the wing. He had 9 tries. I mean, Lamapi had 13, but 9 still pretty solid. His run meter stats, tackle bust stats, also phenomenal. Interesting, your line break man for the Hurricanes was Wes Hussein. Just going to say Julian. Adi Savia was your man for tackle bust from the forwards. Also, in terms of pilfers, I think he was like 3rd best in Super Rugby. I think on average it was only Sam Kane. Was it David Pocock? There was one other above him, but yeah, he was doing some excellent work at the breakdown. Also, one of the leading tackling men for the Hurricanes. Reed Prinsep, Blackwell, Karifi. Karifi was one of the top guys for like forcing penalties at ruck and maul time. So he may not win a clean pilfer, but he will at least get the opposition to concede a penalty. So that's kind of encouraging news for when we look at this squad. So there are some changes for 2020. Some guys coming in. Tyrell Lomax, that's a bit of good news. For their forward pack, Scott Scrafton's coming over from the Blues for the second row. Solid player without being spectacular, I guess. Murphy Taramai, kind of likewise. Both these guys are ex-Blues players. Jamie Booth, Jonathan Talmatene, Kobus van Veek is coming over from South Africa. So there are a few guys with Super Rugby experience coming over to fill some of the spots at the Hurricanes. Some of the guys going out: Chris Eves, Jeff Tumunga Allen, Sam Losi, Bowden Barrett, probably the biggest one. Richard Judd, Matt Proctor, again one of the big ones. Salisi Rayasi is going to play sevens. Nihi Milner-Skudder, who didn't have an impact on last season due to injuries, but he is formally not on the books anymore. So yeah, and Adi Savia is going to miss anywhere between 4 and 6 months with an injury. So that was concerning when I was thinking. And plus the coach left. The coach, John Plumtree, has gone to join the All Blacks as an assistant. So Jason Holland has to take over. So I was thinking, new coach, no Bodie, no Adi. Some of their stalwarts like Tumunga Allen and Losi more recently leaving. Matt Proctor, I was thinking it can't be a good season for the Canes. But then when you look at some of those guys who were the top performers, like I mentioned, Hussein, Prinsep, Blackwell, Lamb, Laumapi, all these guys are going to be there. And as far as I'm aware, they're all fit. I'll take any advice on if these guys are out with like surgery or injuries or whatnot. But Laumapi is definitely the only one I know about. So what might a starting 15 look like for the Canes this season? You could have a front row of Armstrong, Dane Coles and Lomax, and you would say that in terms of hookers, the Hurricanes have got the best depth in Super Rugby in terms of having Dane Coles, Almore and Riccatelli. All guys with, well, Almore not so much Super Rugby experience, but a lot of potential, and Riccatelli and Coles loads of experience. Blackwell, and I saw Walker Leowedes in the second row, Vaya Fafita, Duplessis Karifi and Reed Prinsep could be in the back row, and that's still pretty mean looking even without Adi Savia. Duplessis Karifi, like I said about his forcing those penalties, he's certainly a guy who can cause some damage at the breakdown. TJ Perenara at 9. The 10 one is a question. Like, is it going to be James Marshall? He seems to be the guy that was kind of filling in for Bodie last year from memory, but they've also got Jackson Garden Bishop and Fletcher Smith. So that's one that's definitely a question mark. Like, I mean, on their official squad site, James Marshall is not listed as a fly half or a first 5. He's listed as a utility back. So it'll be interesting to see. Laumapi, you could put Pete Umaga Jensen in the midfield as well. Geordie Barrett at fullback. Ben Lamb, Wes Hussein. To be fair, that's still a pretty bloody good looking team to me. And also the guys I haven't mentioned. Vince Arsel, you could easily slot him in there. Kobus van Veek, like I mentioned. Smith and Jackson Garden Bishop. Evans as well, we could put him in there. Fidel's there. May is there. Leopepe is there. Almore, Riccatelli. Yeah. They're not lacking for depth in that squad. I feel like in a lot of positions they are kind of good. Other positions maybe not as much. So I guess how the injury toll ends up working out will be an interesting one to see. But yeah, expectations. I mean, the Hurricanes are the 3rd favoured team on the bookies odds. So despite no Bowden, no Adi for at least a lot of the season, If it's 6 months, it's pretty much the whole season. Yeah, no Bodie, no Artie, and new coach. That's not putting people off, putting some coin on them. And when I look at that squad, I can honestly see why. Especially when I, as I said, compared it to last year's stats, where a lot of those key performers and high performing guys, star men, even if they're not like the biggest names, like Reed Prinsep, very good player, but he's not like a household name yet. So yeah, there's enough depth in there, I think, to definitely do a job. So yeah, whether they can be the third best team in Super Rugby will be an interesting one. I mean, they have to make the playoffs. You definitely don't want to finish below the Blues in terms of expectations. The battle with Bodie is going to be an interesting one. Like, I don't think he'll be around for that first game, but he might be back in time for that second game. Is it Eden Park or in Wellington? The one in April. There's one in April, and I think Bodie should be back in time for that game. So that one should be a pretty heated one. Oh yeah, I've got the schedule right here. Hurricanes. They do start with the trip away to South Africa, which is, I think, a decent time to get it out the way. 4 weeks at home, but that's including a bye, and they've got the Blues in round 6. Okay. The other game they've got against the Blues is in round 11. So that one's at Eden Park. So that's the one that Bodie should be back for. So that could be an interesting one. So I think their schedule's not too bad. They start, like I said, away, which is going to be tough, but if they play around it, they should be all good. They finish up at home. Hopefully they're hosting a quarterfinal in that week after. So, yeah, could be all right for the Hurricanes. I can hear my children up to all kinds of mischief, so I'm going to head off, guys. Let me know what you think about the Hurricanes season. How do you think they're going to go? Do you think the loss of some of those big names that I mentioned is going to really impact their season the same way it might with some of the other teams like the Crusaders, who are losing a bunch of players as well? Or do you think, based on some of those names that I mentioned, they've got the depth to back up? But yeah, cheers guys, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.